On today's World Insight, likely light at the end of the tunnel over China-India border tensions, the prospects and how commander-level talks are panning out, and a lifeline, fashion houses in distress. The creative force behind the 3.1 Phillip Lim brand talks about surviving one crisis after another for fashion's sake.
Being Chinese and growing up, I guess our value system is in harmony with nature, right?
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei in Beijing. Chinese and Indian military officials held the sixth round of commander-level talks on Monday. The two sides exchanged views on keeping the peace along the line of actual control between China and India. They also agreed to steps steering away from misunderstanding and miscalculation, stop adding troops to the front line, and refrain from taking any actions that may complicate the current situation. So what more could the two neighboring nations do to jointly secure border areas? Let's loop in our panelists. For China-India relations in New Delhi, we are joined by Deepankar Banerjee, who is a senior strategic consultant and former director and head of the Institute for Peace and Conflict Studies. In Beijing, Zhou Rong, senior analyst from the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University of China. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Both sides have agreed to disengage, at least not to send further troops to the line of actual control between the two sides. Is that a good sign?
Yes, it is indeed a good sign. This meeting at Moscow between Foreign Minister Jaishankar of India and State Councillor Wang Yi in Moscow went off very well. There are 5 points on which there was an agreement, and we look forward to the implementation of these 5 points.
Mr. Zhou, your take from China's perspective.
Yes. I really think it's a very sound, very positive information. And what we want to see is to try to implement the common sense between the two foreign ministers and the two defense ministers. Actually, we want India to fully implement their promises. China, of course, have no problem to implement its promises. China will fully obey its what they promised to India. Hopefully, India will do the same thing to China.
Okay. Now, Mr. Zhou and Mr. Banerjee, both of you know very well the region we're talking about are likely to welcome its annual winter very soon. Now, the temperature in that area could reach as low as 60 degrees below zero, which means stationing huge amount of troops in that region for any party will be extremely challenging. At this point, will the two sides, do you think, follow up with their promises?
The meeting was held at the Corps Commander level, 3-star, 2-star general level in Moldo in Ladakh, and further discussions have taken place. India remains committed to fulfilling and implementing these 5 points. We must not allow the differences between our two sides to become permanent and become disputes. But I think it is time, guys. First, of course, no new forces must be inducted into this region at present, and then begin a process of disengagement of the forces which are actually deployed in this region.
Mr. Zhou, step by step,
yes.
How is likely China going to do it? Mr. Banerjee talked about the Indian side. What about China's side?
Tension temperature between India and China, the relationship, should also calm down. For winter, the soldiers should not die from the cold and also should not die from the fighting. So both sides should fully and seriously implement their promises or their consensus. I'm sure for China's side, we are very confident China will fully obey what they said.
Now, Mr. Banerjee, from the Indian side, there has been interesting mixed messages coming from the administrative branch of the government and also from the military. We know that there are nuances between the two sides in India. So how should we understand the backdrop of the promise made by the military? And once made by the military, how likely they are going to be implemented? And what's likely to be the interactions between the military side and the current administration regarding that?
There is no difference between either the military side or the civil foreign ministry side. Now, for example, in this meeting that took place at Moldo in Ladakh, a senior official from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, External Affairs in India, was also present in this general level talks. So there is a singular policy between the Foreign Ministry and the Ministry of Defense, between the army and the civil leadership. There is no difference. So let me suggest that there are differences between India and China position, between the government of India and the PLA and the Chinese government, I'm sure. And so we should both continue our dialogue and discussion based on these 5 principles that both the ministers have agreed to in Moscow, and begin to implement that in sincerity and in complete trust to each other.
Mr. Zhou, Mr. Banerjee certainly stated his point from the Indian's perspective and angle. I'm sure the Chinese dispute the reasons of the clash. Tell me more about what the Chinese stance is regarding the reasons and the causes of the conflict, and also how do you see the possibility of the Indian side coming together regarding implementation?
I think China does not have any single ambitions towards occupying any single inch of Indian territory. There's no such kind of saying. For Indian side, we could not just understand mine is mine, what I think yours is mine. So this kind of way of thinking should not be acceptable. I'm sure the dialogue, as our Indian friends said, is the only way to solve the problem, to resolve the conflict. So the Indian side should just de-escalate the tension, especially from India, not just regard China as enemy. Remember, for the last 2 years, there's 2 summits between China and India. President Xi Jinping and the Prime Minister Modi, they have very, very sincere and friendly talk. We should continue to follow the spirit of the summit.
Go ahead, Mr. Banerjee.
Yes. Now, this is largely what the Indian side also feels. Now, Deng Xiaoping had laid down in 1988 that we should finalize our border arrangements until such time, border between our 2 countries, and till such time as that happens, we should proceed to maintain peace and tranquility in our border areas. Now, it is more than 20 years since then. It is time that we seriously, both of us, both sides, discuss the border area serious manner and resolve this situation. Currently, the border is divided by a line of actual control, what we call in China, in English, as the line of actual control. Now, there should be a clarity regarding that. Both sides should sit down together and agree on this line at the earliest. Once that is agreed upon, then we have had good proposals, firstly from Chinese side in 1996, regarding major significant military confidence building measures. So once the line of actual control is agreed upon, we can implement those confidence building measures between both sides and build more interaction between the PLA and the Indian Army, so that trust and confidence builds up, both between the two militaries and between both countries.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Zhou.
Let's say very important year of 2020. This year is the 70 years anniversary of the People's Republic of China and India established the official diplomatic tie. This is one. And this year, I suppose it should be the 65 years of your first Prime Minister, Indian Prime Minister Nehru, visit China. And this year is also very important. Remember that is both China and India are the largest developing countries in the world. Our two countries' population just take about 40% of the 7 billion population of the world. We all together we have the 2.8 billion. And also, we both are the key member of the BRICS as well as SCO. We have every reason for better and maintain a good relationship. And we have every reason to have a very friendly army, military towards each other. So for this case, if India and China both think about how good we should be, then I suppose the relation will be improved in the later.
Mr. Zhou, there is concern from the Chinese side, if I understand right, correct me if I'm wrong, that there might be the danger of the quote-unquote a third-party involvement, namely the United States. As we know, China and U.S. are in somewhat kinds of a geopolitical competition, if not a rivalry, at least for now. The rhetoric from Washington certainly goes that way. So how big a danger does China see in terms of the India side vulnerable to interference by Washington in this regard, which should be remaining as a bilateral issue when it's a border issue?
Yes, this is a very, very tough question. Let's say this way. First, Indians should know that China is facing some challenge from an unwelcome, unfriendly country. We all know that. And they do a lot of skirmish in South China Sea, as well as the Taiwan Strait, or something like that. And for this case, if Indians do some similar things in the border between China and India, what do you think Chinese ordinary people think about India? So I suppose our Indian friends know that. For this case, India should have a peaceful, very friendly attitude towards China rather than opposite.
Mr. Banerjee, is there a danger of a third-party involvement?
India and China are two ancient civilizations, two large countries. In our bilateral relations, there is no scope, no space for any third party to get involved.
Very good.
And let me assure my Chinese friends that in this case, yes, President Trump quite often comes out and says he's looking for a Nobel Peace Prize, and suppose he can make India and China talk together, he thinks he'll get a Nobel Peace Prize, and he makes statements like that. But both my country and both your country have said that we can sort out this issue among ourselves. However, if you look at global issues, these become larger multilateral issues in which the whole world gets involved. Now that, of course, is not in our hands, not in your hands, not in our hands. It's an international affair. So that will depend upon the international rules, regulations, etc., and for a resolution. See, in our case, in these 5 points that have been laid out in Moscow, firstly, what we should do is, as per those 5 points, disengage our forces now, currently, in this sector, and also in the other eastern sector of India, and eastern sector for China, also in the border area.
Having said that, though, Mr. Zhou, earlier, Mr. Banerjee already clearly indicated what might be the step-by-step approach from India's perspective in terms of reaching an agreement with China regarding border and the future of peace along the current line of actual control. Now, what is China's step-by-step approach possibly? I know a lot of things are nuanced because the two sides really have to work together, not necessarily have to say, this is my plan, let's do it only with my plan, but rather have to work together about the plans and about the steps. But does China have any proposal and timetable so far?
I have a regular working group just on some conflict area to just work together, not only for commanders meeting, but also for the regular meeting between the two military sides. And not only that, but I also feel a little bit uncomfortable that India just try to reduce its trade relations and the investment relations and the science and technology cooperation with China. This may not be good. I think both China and India will share the largest international market to each other. So we both economically need each other and will be in the future rely on each other. So I suppose the relationship between China and India on investment, on trade should be restored very soon. And hopefully that the little conflict, I can say skirmish, cannot influence the comprehensive strategic partnership. We are very different from other countries. If the two countries with a strategic partnership have a conflict, that would be very laughable, very ridiculous.
Both of you gentlemen seem to indicate there needs to be step-by-step approaches by both sides to build up more confidence and trust in one another. Having said that, though, my final question for both of you. How will the two countries be able to avoid the manipulation as a result of the ongoing geopolitics, including that between China and the United States and the U.S. strategy, trying to divide the world between two teams, quote unquote, those with China and those with the U.S., and also the challenges of COVID-19, which is an unprecedented health problem the world is facing altogether. How would the two sides be able to avoid manipulations from these two possibilities? Mr. Zhou first, please, and then Mr. Banerjee.
For this case, hopefully, Indian government may focus its attention to domestic matters. Hopefully, we take this opportunity to have a more dialogue, such as the hotline between the two summits and some other, some junior levels. We can have a hotline dialogue and a hotline conversation, just try to control any kind of crisis happen, or something like it before conflict happened. So that, I think, will be a very good step. And in the future, the instrument will be very regular, very meaningful, very effective.
I see. So that probably would only happen more people to people after the COVID-19 becomes less a problem, because now it's a big problem facing all of us and beyond borders. Mr. Banerjee, your take about how to avoid manipulations as a result of the crisis of COVID-19 and as a result of geopolitical issues. China-U.S. relations is only one of them.
Yes, indeed. I think this is a very important issue facing both our countries right now. Post the pandemic situation, the whole global order is undergoing a very fundamental change. There's greater instability, uncertainties, tension, and the possibility of conflict. This is not in the interest of either China or India or any of the other major powers in the world. So it is time for cool heads to prevail, work out new modalities of cooperation and collaboration. In the last program that we appeared together just a few days ago, I had suggested India has got a very large pharmaceutical industry, And our new medicines for countering COVID will be out in a matter of months. India has been producing, is a medicine factory for the world, just like China is a manufacturing country for the whole world on all other goods. Collaboration between India and China in this respect will be an enormously good measure for both the cooperation and good for the world. But finally, let me also address the question of additional confidence-building measures, military confidence-building measures between our two countries in order to reduce and address the current situation. You know, the conference that was held 2 years ago at near Chengdu, where Dai Bingguo from China and our minister from here and select leaders from both sides had a very frank discussion on our India-China border issues. And in your channel, CCTV channel, I had an excellent session with General Shu Chenggu, and we addressed several issues regarding military confidence-building measures between our two countries. I made a big presentation. We need to move forward in several of those areas. We must first stabilize and improve our bilateral relations in order to be able to cooperate and collaborate for the good of the world.
So, gentlemen, I want to thank both of you for your insights and ideas. Dipankar Banerjee, Joe Rome, really appreciate it. Thank you. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still coming up in our program. A lifeline to fashion houses in distress. I picked the brains of the creative force behind the 3.1 Phillip Lim brand on surviving one crisis after another. A talk for fashion's sake.
We're dealing with a serious moment in time, but we also should remember to let it go, not take everything too seriously, and still have fun and connect to moments of joy.
Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Right now in the Chinese capital, the Beijing Fashion Week is underway. That's despite the uncertainty still gripping the industry, no thanks to the coronavirus pandemic. As one of the most affected, the fashion world is prepping for a reboot. People's demands and choices are gradually being changed by a new normal. So how can the fashion industry survive and eventually still thrive? Earlier, I had a chance to talk to Phillip Lim, co-founder of the famous fashion label 3.1 Phillip Lim. He won an honorable award in the China Fashion Gala for his contribution to cross-cultural understanding in the fashion world. From a small brand to a fashion icon, Lim is pushing for a concept of sustainability. But amid the pandemic, how can he hold on to this concept and still connect his design with people's ever-changing demand? And as an Asian American designer, how has he been bringing the best from both worlds to life and to his design? Let's find out. Tell me about how do you see the changes of the fashion industry as a result of the pandemic and its impact on various factors of our lives?
I feel really terrible that people's lives have been disrupted, but I also try to look at the good parts. The good part is we get an opportunity to reboot, because the way we've been going at fashion, the way we've been consuming fashion at the pace is truly not sustainable. And looking at the big picture, I tried to think about maybe this is happening for us, a chance to reboot and rethink about how we apply that in the fashion industry.
Sustainability was really the thing that you are embracing even before the pandemic. Phillip, particularly with the recent season's collection, you try to bring materials that are representing sustainability. You try to make sure clothes are exactly what they should be like, rather than just accessories or drama. Tell me, how do you think about all these concepts?
Thank you for bringing that up. We call it 3-1 sustainable balance. And, for me, sustainability is a balancing act because to be truly sustainable, if once we exist and once we create, it's not sustainable anymore. So it's about small steps that add to a bigger, grander gesture. And for my company, sustainability can be a very, very daunting and scary word because how do you start? Where do you begin? Can you do? Can you live? You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, we have to live our lives, but we can do it in balance. And I always think about, how do you go back to nature? How do you cooperate and collaborate with nature instead of stealing from nature, instead of just using nature? How do we give back to nature? And for myself and my company, it's about small actions from when we start the design. We try to use natural materials that really are a product of nature and with the natural cycle, so that it comes from nature and then it will disappear with nature. So we don't have to figure out a way to dispose of it.
Your career earlier in the days was about collaboration with artists who emphasize on nature and sustainability, for example, with Phillip Lim earlier. And also, there's something about Asian culture as well, about harmony with nature. Tell me how you have been coming up with all of this idea as a result of your bringing up, as a result of your later lives as a designer, as a result of living in a city like New York for years. How does that make you to be where you are today in terms of sustainability?
You said it, you hit it right on the spot. Being Chinese and growing up, I guess our value system is in harmony with nature, right? We're so influenced by the beauty of nature, the seasons. My mom, she cooked all our meals growing up. She planted all her vegetables. So, growing up, I grew up in the Western world and I try to run away from that. But now I'm here where I am, and it's like I can't escape it. And actually, I want to know more about my roots. And I celebrate my roots in my design. Even when you mentioned Maya Lin too, that was for our 10th anniversary show. And the concept was stop and smell the flowers. Because, our life is so multifaceted and the pace is so insane that I wanted, when my team asked me, what do you want to do for your 10th anniversary? I was like, I just want to stop and be present and smell the flowers, all the flowers that we've been planting. So when we work with Maya Lin, who's a huge environmentalist naturally, it was incredible because the set that we built, we took over 6 months to collect all contaminated soil and dirt from construction sites all over New York City, and we had a bulldozer turn 6 months of topsoil of contaminated soil into topsoil, and we used that as a stage for the show. And after the show, what was amazing is we would donate it to other parks and playgrounds for them to plant the new season. That's truly a circular moment, and we were doing this way back when, and I can't explain why I wanted to do that, but I think it goes back to what you said. Growing up being Chinese, our culture is to be in harmony with nature, and this is where I want to be now in my life, and this is how I want to proceed going forward, in collaboration and harmony with nature.
As we grow, we becoming more and more realized about what is really most important about us, I guess, also about us that we do not know earlier. I guess that's also for a fashion designer like you, who is a huge name on the international stage, but at the same time, a huge inner trip into who you are.
Yeah, I think when we first started this conversation, and we spoke about COVID-19, and what that has done. I look at it as a big, terrible, but grateful lesson for all of us. It's a time to self-reflect, a time to celebrate the beauty, but in value. Not just superficial beauty, but where does the beauty lie in the values that we share? It's time to cross-collaborate. It's time to globally cross-collaborate. I love being on Zoom here using this technology and having an interview with you across the world where it's nighttime here and it's daytime for you.
Yes.
You know, we're cross collaborating. And I think that more than ever, as consumers, as designers, as makers, as people that we share this earth with.
You know, I'm looking at you right now, sitting on a swinging chair in front of your interesting library, you know. I was just thinking, as an artist, this kinds of, in a way, isolation, quote unquote, brings a lot out of one person. And for an artist, probably even more. I'm just really curious, how you've been trying to survive and thrive over the past, 5 months or so. And what have you learned about yourself and many of the idea, sustainable, beauty, and inner peace that you have been talking about earlier? How does that come into being with the past 5 months? Sorry for my long question, but I'm really curious to know.
No, it's great. It's a great question and it's connected. And I've been designing for about 25 years now. And with the change in the industry and the pace in the industry, as a creative, because you're always outputting, you get burnt out, And I think that you get to a point where you're just putting out, but you're never receiving anything for yourself, and you're never replenishing your soul, your creative soul. And this happened, and so I was stuck at home. I was quarantined, and it got me to really just be by myself. It gave me an excuse to stop designing, but that doesn't mean stop being creative. I applied creativity in other things like cooking, cooking every single day and sharing it on Instagram and social media. I started to just create an indoor garden to something about when life is being taken away from us and being threatened, how to nurture and grow life was something so profound, and how we use creativity to design life again. What you see when you say I'm on a swing and the book's behind me, it's true. I'm on a swing in my home, and people always ask me this, but I always use this space to do interviews because it allows me to remember to connect to being joyful and youthful.
Yes.
I think that now more than ever, we're dealing with a serious moment in time, but we also should remember to let it go, not take everything too seriously, and still have fun and connect to moments of joy. And even behind me too, all the books. I just went back in and just started to research all the books again, connect myself with all my favorite photographers, artists, literature, furniture makers. Right now I feel like I'm in a moment where I'm feeding my soul again,
right?
Creatively.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm getting ready for this reboot.
About things that are nouns, the thing that we describe, use them as a word, but do not necessarily really know what they meant. For example, about clothes, here's what you said. I quote that from an earlier report you had. You said last year that I love the idea of going back to the place where clothes are more important. You said it hasn't been about clothes for a while in fashion. It's been about everything else and the circus of it all. I know we are not in the circus business. I love that. I don't know why. I'm not a designer. I'm not someone like a big name like you, but I love that. Exactly what it means that we talk about every day.
I started this business because I was watching my mother sew clothes. I was watching my mother as a new immigrant to the country, buying scraps and collecting scraps of fabric to hand sew pillows, to hand sew our clothes, to fix our clothes. So that was my first memory and experience with clothes. It was real. It had a purpose. It was so made from love. And in this industry now, I've been doing it for 25 plus years now, and I've seen how marketing has taken over what clothes is. And right now, everything becomes an equation. Everyone uses the same formula, and it doesn't really matter what the product is anymore. It's really about the influencing, the marketing, how much advertising you can spend. But when when to convince the consumer that you should buy it, but when the consumer gets it, are they really satisfied with it? Do they know what they have? Do they cherish it? Is there a connection to it? I don't think so. I think that they were caught. You know, they caught the bait. So for me, I want to get back to the place where I want the consumer, the customer, to know how this was made.
You know, we talk about China a little bit in your upbringing, but China has become such a symbol in a way. But now with a lot of things going on, geopolitics, pandemics, and the suspicions and stuff like that, China has become something not necessarily as it used to be. So, I mean the word China, of course. So Phillip, your relation with China cannot be cut off because you are part of the upbringing. But on the other hand, you are an American designer. You are a world designer. So tell me about your eyes, China. What is it?
You know, China is in my heart. It's not in my eyes. It's in my heart. It's in my soul. You know, people always ask me, you know, when I first started this business, 31 Phillip Lim, like 16 years ago, I always had the interviews, you know, does being Chinese affect your design? Are you influenced by the stereotypical tropes of like satin and dragons and phoenix and stuff like that?
The so-called Chinese.
Yeah, and it honestly, it's so disturbing to be so ignorant this way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Superficial also.
And I always superficial and so stereotypical.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, my business partner is Chinese too, and we're both products of immigrants. You know, immigrating to the States. And I always say to people, the Chinese in my designs is never what you will see, but what you will feel. You will feel respect. You will feel dignified. You will feel integrity, because that's the value of China for me. You know, this is how I was raised by my Chinese parents, and this is what we're taught. We taught respect, we taught hard work, but we're also taught that, you know, we deserve a space in this world. You know, not just behind the scenes, but in front of the camera. And I really, really am so grateful for you offering me space, because people like you and I, you know, we're here now, so we have to also now reach out and bring together and uplift other Asian American personalities and talents and whatnot. So it goes back to right now, especially with the pandemic too, and you know the force racist and xenophobic, if I can be very honest, narrative of the China virus, which is absolutely insane. You know, it's so not correct, and we know that this is a health and human virus, so we have to stand up and keep speaking about that and not let them change the narrative. You know.
Love it. I love what you just said, Phillip. We have to have guts, but at the same time, civilized to have a real discussion. Tell people what it is all about.
Yeah, and you know, knowledge and facts, right? This is a health and human virus, and this virus does not discriminate. It doesn't matter where you come from. It does not matter where you live. It's about common sense and how we take care of each other. And I'm going back to how we collaborate with nature, isn't it? You know? And I think that I refuse to let that narrative change, you know, and being living here, I see communities here in Chinatown, communities and stuff like that, and even like elders and young Asians being bullied and attacked. But you know, for me, it's really, that's unacceptable, and I use every opportunity I can to speak up and speak out against it. It's my civic duty.
Thank you so much. I learned so much talking to you, Phillip.
Thank
I think
you.
We are with you, as you just said, an improved version of ourselves.
Yeah.
My conversation earlier with Phillip Lim. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.